Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is King and I will be your storyteller for this video. I just want to say a big thank you to all the new subscribers. Again, you guys are just coming in like crazy and I do appreciate that. It is helping the channel quite a lot and I'm very grateful, so thank you very much. But without anything else, enjoy the video. For a little context, I was in my sophomore year of high school in the Appalachian Mountains. My class had about 70 people, so as you can imagine, this is a tiny place, not really visitors or tourists, just woods and fields for farming. So one night, I'm asleep upstairs in my bedroom with my sister's room right across the hall. It's around 3:30 to 4 a.m. when I hear my mom calling my name, just loud enough to wake me up. I holler back, "What?" She keeps calling, so I get louder. "What?" She continues to call out, so I get up and turn my light on, about to walk out into the hallway. I had woken my sister, and she asked me, "Why are you yelling?" I tell her Mom's hollering for me. She telling me, "Mom's not yelling for you. Go to bed." I'm confused and just go back to bed. Later that day, I asked my mom if she had yelled for me last night. She says no, and they all laughed about it, saying I was dreaming. But I gotten up and turned my light on and was awake. I knew what I heard. Then the weird started happening. Tapping on my windows at night, stuff not being where I left it, hearing footsteps in the attic. A couple months after, I'm driving home, around 12 at night, on a gravel back road enclosed by woods, and that's when I see it. About 7 foot tall, brown, skinny, and scraggly. Not hairy, but scraggly, kind of hard to explain. It is running towards my car, going the opposite direction of me. I slammed on my brakes, thinking I was going to hit it. At that point, I had no idea what it was. I was in shock. After a couple days, I freaked myself out and my family. They took me to a spiritual medium and told us that it had attached itself because of the ley lines that go through our property. She did some cleansing on me and told me that it most likely wouldn't come back. Now it's 5 years later, and I still get creeped out and anxious about driving at night. The feeling like something or someone is just watching me. I just hope it's gone forever. When I was 8, I saw 2 of my cousins, only they were both solid, no hallucinations here. This is how it went. So my cousin, 6 at the time, was sleeping up in her room, locked away. My dad had said, "I'm going to make breakfast. Go see if your cousin is up." "Okay," I replied. I hopped up the stairs and turned into my sister's room, where she was staying. I then opened the door to see her sleeping, but I made sure to poke her a few times to make sure she wasn't faking. After that, I took about 2 steps out the door, not closing it behind me, to see my cousin crawling down the stairs, like she teleported. She wasn't there before. I took a look really fast between the 2. They were both real. I quickly walked down the stairs. My cousin followed. I later told my dad, who didn't believe me. This still left me with a question. What if the sleeping one woke up? What if I choose the wrong one? What if? I have a story of a creature on my hunting land from when I was a kid. When I was about 10 years old, I was hunting with my grandfather, now deceased, on family-owned land near Covington, MI. It was near dusk, and we've been sitting for a couple hours now. We haven't seen much, just a spiker and a small doe, nothing large enough to shoot. We were starting to lose hope, and were getting ready to start the about 1 mile trek back to our cabin. As we were preparing to leave, we heard some twigs cracking from our right rear side. The stand we were in was tucked in the rear corner of a large clearing on one of the biggest trees in the tree line. As the cracks from the twigs got closer, I remember realizing that all other ambient noises stopped. When the creature finally emerged from the tree line, I remember my heart feeling like it stopped working, and an overwhelming feeling of dread washed over me. What I saw was what looked to be a small buck that looked like it hadn't eaten in weeks and was extremely pale, brown, almost grey, with what looked to be a broken neck and a missing antler stumble into the clearing. At this time, the sun was about to sink below the treetops and cover the clearing with shadows. I recall looking over my grandfather and seeing a level of fear I have never seen on his face before. Mind you, my grandfather was tough and fearless as they come, being he'd seen active duty in Vietnam as infantry. After seeing my grandfather's face, it just made the feeling in my stomach become worse. As we watched this deer stumble into the clearing, my grandfather reached for his binoculars As he pulled them out, the lens cover made a small noise on the side of the stand. The creature must have heard it, because it stopped its stumble, now in the middle of the clearing, and creepily rotated around and rose up on its hind legs and stared directly at us for about a minute, before running off in a creepily awkward sprint into the woods. At this time it felt like I had just gotten the wind knocked out of me, and I was petrified with fear. After the encounter, me and my grandfather sat in the stand, completely silent, staring at the clearing, trying to make sense of what we just witnessed. As we started to walk back, we heard extremely weird, almost human-sounding noises coming from the woods around us. By the time we got back to the cabin, my grandfather decided it'd be best to call our trip early and head back home. But before we left, I had to use the bathroom, and our cabin was quite old, so it didn't have indoor plumbing, just an old outhouse. As I sat down to use the toilet, the immense feeling of dread returned, as I heard human-like whispers and small scratches on the back of the outhouse. I screamed at the top of my lungs to my grandfather as I ran out of the outhouse, crying. After that, we drove back home and had a small discussion on what we saw. Despite being an avid hunter, that was my grandfather's last season of hunting, and about a year later, we sold the land. I've told the story a couple times to close friends and family, but I think most of them think I'm crazy, especially being the only witness now that my grandfather has passed away. Till to this day, the encounter sends shivers down my spine every time I think about it. My friend and I were chatting about this creepy experience we had, and I'm finally trying to get to the bottom of it. So I figured I'd turn to Reddit for some answers, if there are any. People will probably think it's fake, but I don't care, believe it or not. I have no clue if this animal/creature is a skinwalker or just a very creepy animal. This took place around 2019, and I do live in Tennessee, right on the outskirts of the Appalachian Mountains. So, here goes. Two of my friends and I were driving on a desolate back road at night. We were jamming to music and talking. Everything was normal. I was driving, my friend Hannah was in the passenger seat, DJing, and our friend Chris was in the back seat behind me. Hannah was trying to pull up a song on YouTube that wasn't on Spotify, so it was silent for a bit while she was waiting on the website to load. But Chris and I were still talking. We came up on a small animal in the road, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, I expected the animal to move pretty quickly once it saw us coming down the road, but it didn't. As I got closer, I slowed down to let the animal have enough time to run off, but it still stayed very still. It almost looked frozen. The closer I got, I could make out that it looked like some kind of cat. The only thing was, it didn't look like any sort of cat I've ever seen. It looked like it had fur, but the fur was flesh-colored. The ears were very small, almost like a kitten's, even though it was only a tiny bit bigger than an adult house cat. It was laying in a way that looked like the Sphinx facing us. The scariest thing about it, though, was its eyes. Not to sound over-dramatic, but its eyes literally looked like the pits of hell were burning inside of them. They were reddish-orangish, and had twinkles of yellow in them that reflected off the headlights. The whole car was silent, and I just stared ahead. This cat scared the shit out of me, and it still wasn't moving. I felt a huge pit in my stomach and began having intense anxiety. It was almost like I was frozen. But I was not about to stop to figure out what this cat was. At this point I had to steer around a bit to pass it without hitting it. I was probably 3 inches away from touching this thing, and as I slowly crept by it, I watched it through the window the entire time. It did not flinch, and the eyes still had the same glow even without my headlights directly on it. After we passed it, about 5 seconds later, Chris yells, "What the fuck was that?" I immediately start freaking out, shouting, "I don't know." Hannah looks up from her phone and says, panicked, What did you all see?" She looked behind us and kept asking. We explained what happened, and she said, "I didn't see anything behind us." Chris and I looked back, and sure enough, it was gone. We drove up the road to her church and turned around in the parking lot. We wanted to get back to Hannah's as soon as possible. When we got back, we rushed in and told her mom what we saw, but we didn't mention that it looked like a cat. We described it as a small animal. Her mother stops for a minute and says, "Was it a cat?" We were blown away. We told her that it was, and she said that her and her cousin came across the same exact thing when they were teens, only it was in a different era, and they saw it peeking out of bushes. Still to this day, doesn't know what it was, and she said that she thinks about it from time to time, even after 30 years. So I guess I want to know a few things. What was this thing? It didn't look like a bobcat, mountain lion, or fox. Is it a demon, skinwalker, wendigo, an unknown Appalachian creature? I've heard of all the legends regarding the woods at night. Don't look up in the trees, don't respond if your mother calls your name, etc. But everyone I've told either tells me it was probably a scared bobcat or that they've never heard of that before. I wanted to share something I experienced in 2018, which, after reading some of the descriptions here, made me think posting would be a good idea. Maybe someone can comment on whether this fits the profile or not. This happened in Urbana, IL during spring 2018 around 8 p.m. I was driving an SUV through a residential area, 30 miles per hour, with moderate street lighting. I was coming home from grocery shopping and turned a corner into the usual street. After driving 1 block, I saw something similar to a large white-silver dog figure suddenly run towards the right front wheel of my vehicle. I gauged its size to be substantially larger than that of a German Shepherd, with an unusual bright hide. I braked quickly in fear of having run over it. Within seconds, I got out of the car and performed a quick check. No signs of any injured animal. No nearby rustling into an unkept garden next to where it all happened. No animal crossing the road. This took less than 5 seconds. Then I paused and saw the same figure 2 blocks away from where I was, looking at me intensely for about 30 seconds. I looked back to the tire in my vehicle, an instant, and it was suddenly gone when I checked again. All happened in less than a minute. After this, I drove around several blocks without signs of any dog or similar animal nearby for about 10 minutes. Estimating the distance and time between events, I am certain that it is not feasible for a dog, much less such a large one, to run that quickly, that distance, particularly without seeing it under the street lighting. And that's it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like and a comment on which one was your favorite story. If you have any theories or similar experiences to these stories of your own, please leave a comment below of what happened and what you think it was. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, there is a Patreon link down below in the description. It does help the channel quite a lot. But again, thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Thank you to everyone who continues to listen here, and every one of you who says they are enjoying these. So I am very happy about that. But until next time, bye bye.